This is one of my favorite Scratch projects. It's not quite a game, not quite an animation. It's called Red v Green v Blue. We get 100 balls to randomly bounce around the screen. Blue infects red, red infects green, and green infects blue until one colour wins out. If you want to see the step-by-step instructions, go to our website 123code.org/I172. So we're going to enter the project code, which is I172, and click on Start Project to bring up the step-by-step instructions. Over on the top right here, we can see a little preview of a finished project. So this is the project. As we can see, there's red, green and blue little balls being created randomly, and they're bouncing around the screen. And the way it works is they infect each other once they touch each other. So red infects green, green infects blue, and blue infects red. And the way it works is it'll keep on going, moving around in a kind of wave, red and green and blue, changing around until one of the colors infects all the rest of the colors, and that's the only color remaining. So that's the way it works. So let's go down to our first step, which is to create a new Scratch project and delete the cat sprite. So let's open up the tip box here by clicking on the blue text and open up the Scratch website. And then we're going to click on the Create button to go into the project editor. As I'm not signed in, the tutorials box appears, so I'm going to close that by clicking the X. And if you have a Scratch account, now is a good time to sign in if you haven't already. So click on the sign in link up the top right and enter in your username and password. And that's always a good idea to do, just so you can save your project. Okay, so we don't need the cat sprite. We're going to delete that by clicking on the X, and we'll go to the second step, which is to create a new sprite, a red dot sprite. So we're going to create this new sprite and use the editor to draw a red circle. To create a new sprite, we'll go down to the bottom right here to the Choose a Sprite, and then click on the paintbrush, and this will open up the sprite editor. So we want to draw a red circle, a filled in circle. So let's choose the circle tool and now choose our color. So we want a red. So we'll slide it across to red. We do not want an outline around the circle. So when you draw a circle, you can have a colored outline around it. We do not want that. So we're going to choose the outline options here and click on this red diagonal stripe, and that means no outline. So to draw a circle, we're going to go to the center of the editor. We're going to left click and then drag across. Now, as you can see, it's not a perfect circle. It's slightly in an oval shape too. So to draw an exact circle, hold down your Shift key on the keyboard at the same time, and that will draw a perfect circle for you. So we're going to rename this costume to red. So select the text up here and put in red instead. And let's go to the next step. So the next step is to create the green and blue costume. So we're going to duplicate the red costume that we've created for this sprite, and we're going to create a blue one and a green one as well. So to do that, you can just right click on your costume and then click on duplicate. So that's once and twice. So we've got 3 costumes now. And we're going to change the color of the second one to blue and the third one to green. So I've got the second one selected. As we can see, the blue selection boxes around it, and we're going to change the color to blue. So let's use the fill paint bucket tool and change to blue. So we'll get a blue color using the slider. If I want to make it a little bit lighter, I can change the saturation, the brightness. It's kind of purple. Let's get that more blue. There we go. So just click on it once, and that changes it to blue, and we'll rename the costume to blue as well. That just makes it easier in our code if the costumes are named appropriately. So the third one is going to be green. So again, we'll get our green. That's a little bit bright, so we'll darken it up a little bit. And then using the paint bucket tool, change it to green. Okay, let's go to the next step. And that is step number 4, create a count variable. So now that we've created our sprite, we're going to start adding some code. We're going to code 100 dots to appear. So we need a variable to let us count to 100. So using the variables toolbox, we're going to create the variable. So let's click on our codes tab here to get back into the code and go into our variables toolbox. and click on the Make a Variable button. So we're going to call it count, C-O-U-N-T, click on OK. So the code we're going to add is when green flag clicked, set count to 0. So green flag is in the events toolbox. Let's zoom in a little bit. And the set variable 2 is in the variables toolbox. So set count to 0. Okay. So next step, step number 5. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hide our sprite using the hide block. And then using a repeat until block, we're going to count from 0 to 99. And within each of the within the repeat block, each time we're going to wait 0.1 of a second. We're going to create a clone of the dot of the circle, and then we're going to change the count by 1. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go into looks to get the hide block, and then we're going to go into control to get the repeat until. Now what we want to do is check if, so the condition of this repeat until is going to check if count is greater than 99. So that way we know we've counted 100 times. So we're going to go into the operators toolbox and get a greater than block here. And in the first part of that block, we're going to get the count block from the variables toolbox. And instead of 50 in the second box here, we're going to put in 99. Okay, let me go back and check the instructions. Okay, so the next blocks to add are to wait 0.1 of a second and to create a clone of myself and then change count by 1. Okay, so in the control toolbox, we've got the wait 1 second. We'll put that inside the repeat until and change it to 0.1. And then we're going to create a clone of myself. So this is going to create a copy of the sprite and a clone of it, and we're going to randomly make those appear around the screen. And then the last step was to change count by 1. So this is how we get the count variable from 0 all the way up to 99. So that's in the variables toolbox, change count by 1. There we go. Okay, let's move to the next step, which is step number 6. And we're going to get the clones to appear randomly around the screen. And we're going to change their costume. So it's going to be red, green, blue, etc. So we're going to use the when I start as clone block. So that is in the control toolbox. So this doesn't join into anything. This goes on its own. So when I start as clone. And then we're going to use the repeat block to choose a random costume. Between 1 and 3. So we know that there's 3 costumes, red, green and blue, and we're going to randomly choose one of those by picking a random number between 1 and 3 and then making it move on to the next costume. So moving on to the next costume, just cycle. So if the costume is currently red and the random number is 2, then it's going to move next costume twice, so onto blue and onto green. So this is how it works. So we need a repeat block, repeat a certain amount of times, and then to get the random, pick random block is in operators. So pick random, and we'll change it to be 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to change the costume, so that's in looks. And we will get next costume, where are you? There you are. And that goes inside. And now underneath the repeat block. So once we've changed the costume, what we want to do is make it go to a random position on the screen, and then we want to make it show. So we're going to make it go to a random position that's in motion. So go to random position and then looks for show. So let's test out this code. So when I click this now, when I click the green flag, what should happen is we set count to 0. The sprite is going to be hidden, and then 100 times it's going to create a clone of itself, and then when a clone is created, it's going to choose a random costume between the 3 costumes. It's going to go to a random position on the screen, and then it's going to appear. So let's try it out. So as we can see there, the dots are going in nicely. Okay, that seems to be working, and we can see our count variable. That should go all the way up to 99 or to 100. Oh, that's right, because the way we have it is if repeat until count is greater than 99, and the first number that's greater than 99 is 100, so that's why that appears. Now, when you add a variable, it automatically displays the value of that variable in the stage area here. You can drag it around, you can make it large, you can change it to a slider and a few different things like that, but we actually don't need this to appear. So if you want to make this disappear, you can go to your variables toolbox, and beside your variable you'll see a checkbox and it'll be on or off. You'll see our count variable is currently on, so I'm going to click that so it's not checked, and as we can see, the display of the value of the variable has now disappeared. Just looking at the disks here, they're a little bit large, and maybe when I drew the sprite it was a little bit big. So I'm going to add in an extra block of code just to make them a little bit smaller. So there's two ways you can shrink it. You can set the size here in the sprite property, so that's currently at 100%. Or another way of doing it is using the set size to block. So this is actually what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put it in underneath the green flag so it'll happen straight away. So I maybe want them about maybe 60% of that size. So let's change it to 60, and we'll click on the green flag. Yeah, that's about right. That gives enough space because we are going to program them to move around. So we want them small enough that they have a little bit of space to move around before they collide with each other, before they bump into each other. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. So step number 7. So now we're going to make them move. So we're going to add in some new code underneath the show block. And what we're going to do is we're going to point them in a random direction. So if we look at the little preview here, you can see that they are, moving up, down, left, right, different directions, and we want that to be random. So we're going to point them in a random direction, and we're going to pick a random number between 0 and 359. The point in direction block, actually I'll drag it in, it might be easier to display it this way. So let's get the point in direction block. So the way that this works is you choose a direction between 0 and 359 degrees, and we're going to get a random number to put into there. So let's go into operators. Again, we'll get our pick random block, and we'll go from 0, so 0 degrees, which is straight up, to 359 degrees. Okay, and then underneath that, we're going to start making them move. So we're going to use a forever block because we want this to keep on happening. We're going to make them move 3 steps. And if they are on the edge of the stage area, they're going to bounce. So you can see in the preview there, they're bouncing. So let's go into the control toolbox, get our forever block and put it underneath. And let me just check the code again. Move 3 steps, and then if on edge bounce. And these are both in the motion toolbox. So let's drag in the move 10 steps, and we'll change that to 3. And if on edge bounce should be in here as well, and I'll drop that in. So let's just try that out. We can see them appearing, moving around. And just again, looking at this, maybe still a little bit big, so I'm going to change this to maybe 50%. Yeah, that's a little bit better, just a bit more space. Okay, so let's move on to step number 8. So the second last step. There's just 9 steps in this project. So we're going to add some new code to underneath the when I start as a clone. And we're going to add it inside the forever that we've already put in, and underneath the if on edge bounce. So if red is touching blue, we're going to switch the costume to blue, so blue infects red. If green is touching red, red infects green, so we're going to switch the costume to red. And if blue is touching green, then green is going to infect the blue, so we'll switch the costume to green. And this is the reason that we renamed the costumes to red, blue and green, so it makes it easier when you're actually adding the code. And one last point I want to make here is you can see that we're actually nesting if-else statements. So we've got an if-else block here for the first check to check if blue or if red is touching blue. And if it is, we're going to set it to blue. So we're going to switch the custom to blue. So else, and then we're going to put in another if then else block. So this is what's called nesting because it goes inside. We're going to check green touching red, then we'll switch custom to red, else, and again, one last if then block. If blue is touching green, we're going to switch it to green. So when you are adding in these blocks, just be careful and take your time to enter them in the right way, so they're set up just like they are on the screen here. If you put them underneath, it won't work as it should. So let me drag this group of blocks up to the top so we have a little bit of space. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add all my if then else's at the start before I even put in the color checking. So I put in my first if then else. I'm going to get a second if then else and put it in the gap underneath the else. And then finally I'm just going to get an if then and again put that on inside the gap of the else here. So now we want to get our touching colors. So that's in sensing. So we can, there's a block here if color is touching another color. So that's what we want. So let's put 3 of these into the conditions of the if else's. And we'll set these up. So we want, let me check my code. So if red is touching blue, so let's go get the reds. So I'm going to click on the green here in the block, choose the eyedropper tool, and I'm hoping to catch a red. You'll need to be fast to do that. And we'll change it, the second one to blue. So again, same technique. Let's catch a blue. Come on, blue. Any blues around? See, as they're actually changing as they go through. There we go. There. And let's just test that out. So we want to get the switch costume to block to see if this works. So go into the looks and get a switch costume to, and we're going to change it to blue. Oh, just looking at this, I didn't rename my third costume. So let's go and do that now. So that's still red 3. We need to change it to green. And back into my code, that should update straight away. Yep, we've got 3 costumes, red, blue, green now. Okay, so we can see already that it is working because there's no reds left. So when reds touch blue, the costume changes to blue. So let's try it again. So we can just follow a red touching a blue. Yeah, we can see that working. Okay, so now the next one is if green is touching red, we'll switch to red. I'm just going to drag in 2 more of the switch costumes too. So let me check again, green touching red. Okay, so let's go get a green color. There we go. And we'll get the red. Oh, to get the red, we will need to start again. Actually, I'll pull this block out, make it easier. Let's catch a red. Oh, no. It's like fishing. There we go. And again, I'm going to pull these out because I don't actually want them to work just yet while I'm setting up these color blocks. And then blue touching green. So let's go get the blue. Come on, blue. There we go. And restart this. And we'll get the green. No. Oh, nearly. Come here. There we go. Okay, so let's put our switch costumes back in. And then we'll test it. So blue, green, blue, red, and this one should be green. So if green touches blue, it should infect and change it to green. So let's test it again. So we've got the red, blue, and green discs being created. They're bouncing around. As they touch into each other, they're infecting each other in the different ways. And sometimes it'll look like one color is going to be dominant, it's going to win, and another disc will get cloned and it'll just start infecting the opposite way. So let's see how it works out. It's pretty even. We've got reds and blues. Blues are kind of dominant, but here comes the greens. But here comes back the reds. So it'll be interesting to see which color wins this particular battle. So still we've got all three colors. And once a color is still, so we've got 100 of the discs bouncing around now. And we've no more blues, so it looks like the reds are going to win out. Yep. So let's go, was there one more step? The last step is to improve the project in any way that you can think of. So do you have any ideas on how you could improve the project? You could maybe add some sounds to it. You could maybe add a background. You could even maybe add variables to see how many reds and blues and greens are currently on the screen, just to kind of give a live count of who is winning along with what you can visually see. So I hope you enjoyed that project. It's not quite a game, it's not quite an animation, but it is something that I think is a good bit of fun, using all the different random blocks and kind of seeing which color wins out in the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to get our weekly coding projects, make sure to click on subscribe. And if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see us make next, just comment in the video below.